What's up? My name is Eric Butler. This channel is called Report and Opine. I am back, and from High Snobiety, Supreme is dead. Long live Supreme. So High Snobiety is like the number one competitor to Hype Beast. Back in the day, they used to cover loads of cultural, fashion, streetwear, skate, even some music. Slowly but surely, it just turned into a way to sell you something on every single article. No shade, that's just what happens. And now they are saying Supreme is dead, and it certainly is not as highly sought after as it once was. It's kind of like the Drake cosign. You used to get a Drake feature, and that would immediately propel you into stardom. It's still valuable. It will still certainly help a lot of people, but it's not what it once was. And you see here, they've got the Supreme Tombstone, April 94 to March 2023. Giant Fendi ad on the side. Supreme is dead. It's a sentiment shared umpteenth times by blogs, forums, Discord groups, Instagram commenters, and prosaic TikToks over the past however many years, but finally the Supreme doom-mongering may actually bear weight. Yeah, it probably had something to do with that corporate takeover, that sale. I mean, they quite literally sold out. I don't mean that in a derogatory way. It's just the guys who are running it for 20 years just, I don't know, sold it to a corporation. Fine, cash out. Take your profits while you can. I have no problem with that. I was never a big Supreme guy. As much of a hype beast, in the sneaker realm as I was never really big on Supreme. The Supreme 5s were pretty cool though. They dropped some cool stuff, but I was never one of the, wait in line guys. I did wait in line for Yeezys, the very first ones, back in 2009, but that's a different story. I don't think it's at all controversial to posit that Supreme is currently no longer the culture-defining juggernaut it once was. Yeah, that's absolutely facts. Right? I mean, you got like kindergartners wearing this stuff, right? I mean, it used to be like it was you at one point you had to be in New York to get it, and then it moved to LA and it was kind of all downhill from there. But now it's like got little kids wearing it. It's basically like Target now. No shade, I shop at Target. Is Supreme actually dead, though? There's a funny paradox at the heart of the question. Within the ever-nebulous realm of streetwear, dead doesn't necessarily refer to a brand that's inactive or even inactive. It simply refers to a brand that's lost the cultural clout it once had. Yeah, so it is. And it's been dying for a long time, right? Dead brands aren't as cool, as hyped as their counterparts. But it's fine. It'll come back. Same thing with Stussy, right? Stussy was the hottest thing on the planet, maybe like late 80s or early 90s, before my time even, really. And then it sort of died down and it came back. So it'll come back, but it's just going, I mean, this is terrible. They have to pay Courtney Love for this. I don't even know how this happened. Who would wear this? And for a fact, when you see a guy with the painted nails, he's compromised. This man can't be trusted. Stop painting your nails, bro. To be clear, Supreme remains one of the biggest streetwear brands in the world. Crucially, Supreme perpetually enjoys the name brand recognition that comes with being one of the brightest stars in the biz, a factor that Supreme parent company VF Corp seems to value above actual sales. And not only did the expansion of the brand from New York to LA and then Japan, all that stuff, play into this, but when they went full luxury with Louis Vuitton, that was basically the end of it. It became completely out of reach for regular people. People are paying $15,000 or something crazy for a red hoodie with LV logos all over it. It was ridiculous. Though Supreme's revenue apparently hasn't quite reached VF Corp's 600 million goal, the VF Corp doesn't announce returns for individual brands. Reported figures put Supreme's yearly revenue somewhere below 450 million. And well, that's because most of the money goes into the pocket of resellers. VF appears to value Supreme's branding goodwill enough to offset the debt it incurred when it paid $2.1 billion for Supreme back in 2020. So it wasn't even that long ago. I thought it was a little bit longer that they sold it, but 3 years ago. But call it recognizably or call it goodwill, familiarity does not equal clout. And then here's a post from their own Instagram. Is Supreme still cool? And look, I don't want to sound like a cool kid hipster, but it's been many years. I remember back in Brooklyn, one of my buddies bought a Supreme jacket thinking he was going to flip it like the next week, and he couldn't get rid of it without taking a loss. So it hasn't been cool for many years, right? I mean, and that's fine. There comes a point where something becomes so uncool, it's cool all over again, maybe like a members only jacket or something. Look at one-time Supreme challengers like the like Antisocial Social Club, now available to the masses at Urban Outfitters and owned by the company that operates Martha Stewart's brand. Antisocial Social Club is no longer cool in the way it was half a decade ago, but it's never been more visible and still sells out every big drop. And yet, culturally conscious types paradoxically consider ASSC dead. Yeah, because when it reaches a certain level, it's like when your parents show up, you know, and they want to friend you on Facebook or something. It's like, dude, it's over. It's not. It still exists. It's not dead, you know, quote unquote dead technically, but it doesn't have the clout. It's not cool anymore, which is fine. Something else will come along, and the cycle will continue. The difference, obviously, is that ASSC was lightning in a bottle, an overnight success never intended to be anything more than a catchy name. Meanwhile, Supreme's been a cultural touchpoint since the 90s. Yeah, Antisocial Social Club obviously caught fire because Kanye West wore it. That's what happened. Thing is, Supreme really hasn't changed much since then. Supreme updates domain to supreme.com. I don't know what it was before. Supreme New York. Okay, that makes sense. New year, new Supreme. You may be able to get to Supreme New York website a little quicker as the brand shortened its URL to supreme.com, which I'm surprised. They must have had to pay somebody off to get that because it was Supreme New York, I guess, for a long time. And somebody probably had supreme.com and they had to, you know, now that they're owned by this billion-dollar corporation, they had to just pay to get it. Like, it's almost newsworthy that Supreme finally switched the domain for its bare bones website from Supreme New York to the Shopify-powered supreme.com. So, yeah, now they're just a run-of-the-mill Shopify store. No shade to the Shopify stores, right? Everybody's got to do it. We all got to make a living. I don't have one. I should soon. But what was once very exclusive is now a Shopify-supreme.com. Not cool, you know, according to the cool kids. Supreme was arguably the most powerful brand in youth culture for the entirety of the 2010s. I'd say, yeah, I guess so. Its high-profile collaborations sold out in milliseconds as merch-crazed fans devised bots to auto-snipe coveted drops and reshared images of themselves wearing their new goods on Tumblr. Yeah, that's fair. But look, I mean, it's just corny. It just doesn't look that good. It doesn't really have a shelf life. I guess the box logo will be forever timeless, but all of this weirdo stuff just doesn't have a shelf life. So it's cool for a week or two after the drop, and then it's worthless. It's like when you drive a luxury car off the lot, right? You put 2 miles on it, and the value halves. But times are a-changing. Even if Supreme itself isn't, the age of social media, it's iterate or die, and Supreme clearly has no desire to iterate. Back in the day, even the middling Supreme collabs used to sell out instantly, if only because enterprising flippers would attempt to make a buck. However, Supreme and the North Face's Spring-Summer 2023 collection, typically one of Supreme's hottest drops, sat online for days. Yeah, it's over. Because not only, I mean, did you sell out to this corporation, but it just doesn't look that good, right? It ran its course. You guys had some new, fresh ideas. You had some new styles, but you can only do the same thing over and over for so long, especially when it's being oversaturated. I mean, before, it was like, what, a couple hundred T-shirts that you had to go get from a store in New York? Those days are obviously long gone. On the secondhand market, Supreme Spring-Summer 2023 TNF Nupsies, okay, the North Face Nupsies, I guess that's their flagship item, the North Face Nupsie, are selling for maybe $100 over retail. Some of Supreme's past Nupsies designs can resell for upwards of 4 figures for comparison. The lack of excitement is palpable, especially on third-party Supreme platforms and where fans rate and discuss recent Supreme drops. So I guess it's StockX or something, and all these Instagram accounts. I don't know, what's that, a crock pot or something they made? Not that the product is worse than it used to be by any means. I don't know about that. It's being mass produced. I don't think there's nearly as much attention to detail. Actually, I'd posit that Supreme is killing it in terms of product alone, thanks in no small part to new creative director Tremaine Emery. Oh, wow, I didn't know he was the creative director. That's Denim Tears, I believe, who used to be a friend of Kanye, and then they famously beefed on Instagram. Kanye called him out for being kind of an establishment shill, which he is, but that's a different story. With its current season delivering everything from new Nike Dunks to kitschy Supreme branded Tamagotchi. Yeah, I saw that. And there's another Fendi ad. There's the Tamagotchi, the Supreme fingernails. And Supreme, I mean, they used to do those super risque. I don't even want to call it risque. It was just basically nudity in the calendars, which at the time was cool. It was cutting edge, right? But now it's not edgy anymore. It's just regular for high school kids at best, probably even younger. But the kids who gathered in droves outside Supreme's new LA store weren't clamoring for cool product. They just wanted to flip sneakers. Yeah, so people didn't want it anymore. They didn't want it for themselves. Back in the day, people used to line up to buy things for themselves, and then somewhere along the line, it changed to buy stuff to flip it, right? It was all lost. And I will continue to say this forever. I think you can find the coolest stuff at a decently priced vintage store, Army Surplus, even Goodwill, and you don't have to go out there and give all your money to this weirdo brand. I shouldn't say weirdo. It used to be cool, but it's not anymore. Even though that sounds kind of uncool. Neither here nor there. Such is the state of any brand big enough to get a Nike Dunk collaboration. To be fair, and embarrassing dudes have flexed Supreme collections since time immemorial, but there are a lot of kids who see Supreme as streetwear's elderly, not elder, statesman. Yeah, so that's pretty much a diss. If we're at a point where 16-year-old sneaker convention attendees think Supreme is ready for a comeback, maybe it's actually been gone for a while. Yeah, and I did mention that. There comes a point where things become so uncool that they're cool all over again, and the cycle will continue. So it will be back. It's not dead, but in my humble opinion, it hasn't been quote-unquote cool for many years. But I was never one of those real Supreme heads. Who swiped Supreme's crown? I'd argue that it wasn't any one brand, but a collective of labels empowered by social media and reconfigured creative direction. Palace, skateboards, I never was really into that. I was never really into any of this. I mean, Jordans and vintage, and then I did my own thing for a long time. But this isn't about me. Outrage over Supreme's bizarre accessories is now directed at mischief. Yep. Ingenious conceptual products. Supreme's unchallenged collaborative dominance has been entirely upturned by Palace skateboards. So mischief, Palace saved from, ignominy of mall retailers by a killer creative team, including current Supreme creative director Tremaine Henry. Stussy is now the streetwear king, coveted by the TikTok set and fashiony folks. Yeah, and Stussy was popular in the late 80s and 90s, and then went away. It wasn't cool, and now it's back. And the same thing is going to happen. And there's the, what is that, Ronnie Feig, I believe. Ronnie Feig, Clark's Originals, Adidas. And these, I mean, these are pretty cool. Is it worth waiting in line? Is it worth paying hundreds of dollars? Absolutely not. But, like, they look like a decent shoe. I don't know if that's really going to be more popular than a Supreme Dunk collab, because I do think they can still get, it's like when they go off into those weird collaborations, those weird Nike sneakers that nobody really wears. But if you're talking about dropping a Dunk, then a Supreme Dunk is always going to sell out. And there's also people who think that Dunks just showed up. It's like Dunks have come and gone. Fashion has been cyclical for a very long time, right? I'm old enough to remember, flares, skinnies, flares again, wide leg, right? I wasn't there for bell bottoms, but it's all the same. It's gonna go and come back. And then they start talk about Kith, I guess, which is taking over. Obviously, Nocta, Drake's doing his thing, Yeezy products. No one's on top forever. Yeah, that's a fact. So is Supreme dead? Obviously not. It's a $1 billion company or $1 million company owned by $1 billion corporation. But is it cool anymore? Absolutely not. And it hasn't been for many years. And even calling a brand cool seems a little bit corny, but it is what it is. So thank you for watching. Please like, comment, share, and of course, subscribe.